Hey guys, Yuji here with another Ret Paladin PvP guide. Today we're talking about 9.2. Now 9.2 has quite a few changes with the double legendary and set bonuses, so we'll talk about how all of those change the spec. But to start things off, let's talk about the talents. For the most part, your talent choice haven't changed. The only thing is our set bonus kind of restricts what talent tree plays even more so, which kinda sucks. So for tier 1 or the level 15 row, you're gonna want to go Zeal. The reason for this is because Zeal makes it so that after you use Judgment, your next 3 auto attacks occur faster, which makes it so that we proc Art of War more often. And Art of War directly affects our new set bonus. Our set bonus makes it so that whenever Art of War procs, we get Seraphim for a couple seconds and also has a chance to reset the cooldown on Wake of Ashes instead of Blade of Justice. So it's kind of good, it's kind of cool. We're going to be wanting to try to proc it as often as possible, and Zeal increases your chance with that. Also, the other two just don't do enough damage to make them worth using. Then in tier 25, we're also going to want to go Blade of Wrath. It makes it so that Art of War procs 100% more often and also increases the damage of our Blade of Wrath. That part doesn't really matter since we're going to be hoping to get the Wake of Ashes reset anyways. Now it kind of sucks because with the new season, there could have been like a really cool cleave build where you go Imperium Power and you also go Lawbringer, and then you go the legendary that increases Divine Storm damage. It could have been really good. It might still be good, but it just kind of messes with the set bonus a bit, making it harder to get the max value out of it. So for the most part, you're gonna be stuck playing Blade of Wrath. But if you want to have fun and try to go for crazy cleave, you can go for Imperium Power. Next up, we have tier 30, which is our CC tier. For the most part, you're gonna want to go Fist Justice every single game. But some games, Blinding Light's also gonna be pretty good. For example, I was playing Ret Fury Warrior 3s, and he doesn't play Stormbolt, so a lot of times I'd have to set up my own CC chain with Blinding Light into Hodge kill target, so that making it so that we actually have some type of cross CC. It's actually not too bad, but it's definitely situational. Next up is tier 35. You're either going to go Unbreakable Spirit or Eye for an Eye. You're pretty much going to want to go Unbreakable Spirit every game that doesn't have a really strong melee or double melee. Into those, you'll play Eye for an Eye. Eye for an Eye makes it so that you take 30% reduced physical damage for 10 seconds whenever it's up, and it's a 60-second cooldown, so it's really good into a lot of double melee matchups. It lines up really well with Enhanced Doom Winds, BM Hunter, Bestial Wrath, Windwalker, Bone Dust Brew, so if you can use it properly, it's a really powerful tool. Next up, we have the tier 40. So tier 40 is kind of just subjective, just kind of what you prefer, but I personally think the Divine Purpose is better into most matchups. Seraphim is good into some, and if you just really like Seraphim, then just play it every single game. It's pretty good also. It's just way more burst, but it's also really predictable burst since you have to set up, get the 3 Holy Power, activate the buff, and then you get to do your damage. However, I do think it's really good into some like super tanky teams like Warlocks and things like that you just need to kill them really quick, like in the stun. It can be really good into those teams. Next, for tier 45, now this is the only tier that's changed quite a bit. So since Walk got nerfed so many times, I don't think Healing Hands is worth it anymore. Selfless Healer heals for a ton, and also makes it so that we don't have to really spend our Holy Power on healing, and we still get a pretty decent amount of healing. The only thing is would not run it into teams that are going to purge a lot, so don't run into Enhanced Shamans, maybe Demon Hunter teams, just things like that. Because if it gets purged once, you're going to lose all the stacks, and you're just going to never get any value from it. So against those teams, you might as well just stick with Healing Hands. Next up, tier 50. For the most part, Sanctified Wrath is better. It's just really good damage, increases wings duration, and plus, when added with Necrolord, it can be really good since you can kind of stagger your goes, use one Necrohammer for the first 15 seconds, and then the second Necrohammer towards the end after their cooldowns have worn off. But Final Reckoning is really good for if you're trying to go for crazy burst. Paragon with Seraphim is really powerful. It's the only problem is it's way better with Kyrian in my opinion, so it might not be as good with Necrolord. However, it's really good in 2s since a lot of the times you're not going to be able to get the max value of Sanctified Wrath in 2s. You're going to kind of want to go for the big one-shot bursty spec with Seraphim Final Reckoning in 2s, so that is a situation where Final Reckoning is good. So now we have PvP talents. So Red has a ton of really good PvP talents. The problem is we don't have enough slots. We really only have one slot that we can change, The other two talents, Blessing of Sanctuary and Aura of Reckoning, we really cannot change too often. Blessing of Sanctuary makes it so that we can instantly remove a stun, silence, or fear or horror from an ally target, or you can use it preemptively to reduce all of those kinds of CC by 60% for the next 5 seconds. It's just really good. It gets your healer out of CC, can prevent massive CC chains, or if you want to use it on yourself, you can prevent a big stun go on yourself. Just a really good talent. It's only a 45-second cooldown. It's just really strong. Next is Aura of Reckoning. Pretty much it makes it so that whenever you or an ally are critically struck, you get a stack of Reckoning, and once you hit 50 stacks of Reckoning, you pretty much get wings for 6 seconds. It's a really good secondary burst window outside of your main set of wings, and you really can't afford to not run it. But now that those two are gone, let's talk about the other choices. So the ones that are worth using are Luminescence, Unbound Freedom, Vengeance Aura, Lawbringer, Jurisdiction, Law and Order, Judgment of the Pure. So pretty much all of them. They're all really good in certain situations. I mean, Luminescence makes it so that you and your allies do more damage. Unbound Freedom makes it so that you can freedom an ally as well as yourself whenever you cast it, and also makes it so that yours is undispellable and gives you a speed boost. Vengeance Aura pretty much makes it so that you do more damage and have higher crit chance, so it can be really good into trying to one-shot teams. Lawbringer is some pretty good cleave. It's very situational. I haven't really figured out good situations to run it, but it could be really good. Jurisdiction, if you're playing against teams that are going to be really hard for you to hodge the healer, and you're playing a comp that you need to hodge the healer consistently, so to things like Double Caster or the Resto Druid, it can be really helpful to make sure that you land those hodges. Also, I didn't even realize this, but they made it so that it increases the range of Blade of Justice and Divine Storm, which could be pretty good with the new Necrolord rep build. I never really saw that before. Next up is Law and Order. Pretty much you run this if your team doesn't really have a consistent slow. It makes it so that whenever you use Blade of Justice, it applies Hand of Hindrance, which makes your target slowed by 70% for 3 seconds. It also makes it so that if they dispel your Hand of Hindrance, it reduces the cooldown of it by 15 seconds, so it just makes it way easier to keep onto targets and have consistent slows for your team. And lastly is Judgment of the Pure. This ability is very niche. What it does is it makes it so that when you cast Judgment on a target, it dispels one poison, disease, magic effect that they have applied to your team. So for example, if your healer is trapped and then you Judgment the Hunter, you have a chance of dispelling the trap. It can be really powerful into teams like that. The only problem is against teams that have lots and lots of different debuffs, it doesn't really work out too well. Also, if you play into something like a Shadow Priest or a Warlock, you're just going to end up killing yourself every single time you press Judgment, so probably don't do that. But yeah, that's about it for the PvP talents. So now let's talk about Covenants. So towards the end of last season, Ret's best Covenant finally changed. They ended up buffing Necrolord a ton, and it's just really good now. However, even with the changes, Kyrian was still pretty close. They were both really good, but it's just kind of preference, whichever you prefer. Into certain comps, either one is better. But now with the double legendary change, this season Necrolord is definitely the best. But if you really like Kyrian, it's also really good. It's just the Covenant legendary really isn't the best. But when combined with Judgment of the Pure, it could be really good into things like Rogue Mage or Jungle or things like that. As for Necrolord, here is your general Soulbind tree. You're going to be wanting to go Plague Advisor Marilith, and you're going to want to do something kind of like that. Also, here is the Kyrian tree if you are interested. So now let's talk about conduits. Conduits are pretty simple. For potency, all you're going to need is your Covenant conduit and also Templar's Vindication. Then if you have a third slot, the best one is usually going to be Virtuous Command. It's not really the best, but it's something. Most of our potency conduits aren't really that good. However, I could see something like Truce Wake being kind of good, since we're going to be able to use Wake of Ashes more often because of our set bonus. But it kind of depends just how often it's going to actually proc. For defensives, you're going to need to go Shielding Words. It just is really good. Makes it so that your wall pretty much heals for an extra 30% on yourself. And also, if you have another Endurance conduit, you're going to be wanting to go Divine Call, which just makes it so that your bubble is on a shorter cooldown. As for finesse, that can vary a bit. If you don't really want to think about anything, you can just run Echoing Blessings. Echoing Blessings is really powerful. It makes it so that after you use Freedom, you get a speed boost, and also makes it so that whenever you use Bop and Sank or Sack, it makes the target take reduced damage also. Just a really good conduit. If you don't really want to think about things, you can go this every single time. But into certain teams, playing something like Pure Consecration can be really powerful. Into a team that has a ton of fears, when you're in Concentration Aura, it makes it so that fears are reduced by 36% with this eye level conduit. I think it'll probably boost up to 40% once you get the highest eye level conduit for this season. But that's really good. So a 6 AM fear is going to be down like 2.5 seconds. That is pretty insane. That can really save you games. But it's kind of situational because certain teams, like if you're playing with a priest, a lot of them are going to be playing Will, or if you're playing with a shaman, you already have Tremor. So it just kind of depends. But that is it for conduits, honestly. It's not that really complicated. So now let's talk about legendaries. So legendaries are one of the biggest changes this season. You can run 2 legendaries now. One has to be your Covenant Legendary, and the other one can be whatever you want. This is the main reason Necrolord is amazing this season. When playing Necrolord, you'd end up playing the Covenant Legendary anyways. So now you get to use that, plus you can use one random other legendary depending on whatever thing you want to do. The main one being Final Verdict. Increases the damage of your Templar's Verdict by 10%. Also makes it so that you can't be disarmed when using Templar's Verdict. Also increases the range of Templar's Verdict. It's just really good. The only annoying thing is since you're going to be using with Vanquisher's Hammer now, whenever you use your Templar's Verdict when you have the buff, you're going to also be casting Divine Storm. So if you're going to be using it from a distance, it could make it so that your Divine Storm misses. So you kind of have to be more aware of that from now on. Another legendary that could be really good is Random Endless Kings. It makes it so that when you drop below 20%, you get a 50% wall for the next couple seconds. And it's only on a 45-second cooldown. It can be really good in some teams. It can literally win you the game. So against some things, you're going to be wanting to run this. Then, other than that, a cool one that I was thinking about is Tempest of the Lightbringer, which, if any of you guys played Legion, it makes it so that your Divine Storm shoots out and hits more targets. It also deals 20% increased damage, so it could be really good with Necrolord Ret. Maybe doing like a full cleave build with Empyrean Power and Lawbringer could be really good, but we'll have to see. I definitely am going to try it sometime in the future. But it might not be worth it because pretty much everything Ret has right now is about buffing Templars, especially with the Conduit Templar's Vindication. It might be hard to justify playing that legendary. So now our set bonus. Our set bonus honestly isn't amazing. Our 2-piece is that whenever our Art of War procs, you get Seraphim for 3 seconds. And our 4-piece is that whenever Art of War procs, there's a 50% chance to reset the cooldown of Wake of Ashes instead of Blade of Justice. The 4-piece isn't terrible, but it could be annoying at times since it could cause Wake CD to get thrown off a bit randomly, but overall it's decent. The 2-set bonus, however, is incredibly high RNG. Sometimes it'll proc and it'll do absolutely nothing, and sometimes it'll proc and just instantly win you the game. I honestly hate it. It's a terribly designed set bonus, for PvP at least, and just continues to perpetuate the bullshit lottery gameplay that is Ret Paladin Sex Pack. I personally hope they disable set bonuses in PvP, but we all know that's not going to happen. Okay, so now let's talk about gear, starting off with stat priority. Our stats haven't really changed in Sex Pack. It's still going to be Verse, Mastery, and then Haste. It can kind of vary how much each you want, but overall you just want Verse in every piece. Now for trinkets, there are a ton of new trinkets this season, but only 1 or 2 are really good for Ret, in my opinion. The Resonator and Aegis. So pretty much you want to get both of those and an on-use trinket and a Battle Master, if possible. Aegis is really powerful in double caster teams and enemy Ret Paladins. Resonator can be really good, but it's a bit gimmicky and somewhat hard to set up on Ret, so it's only really good depending on what comp you're playing. On-use is really good when you're not getting trained for some extra burst, and Battlemaster is good into teams you wouldn't run Aegis, since it pairs really well with your wall. So now let's talk about our burst rotation. I'm going to split this into 3 different types: Divine Purpose plus Sanctified Wrath, Seraphim plus Sanctified Wrath, and Seraphim plus Final Reckoning. So to start things off with Divine Purpose plus Sanctified Wrath, you want to start by getting at least 4 Holy Power with Judgment debuff on your target and Vanquisher's Hammer buff up. Then you want to Templars into Wake into Templars. Then, depending on how much damage you need, you can either Blade of Justice into another Templars or Vanquisher's Hammer. Your priority here is Templars when you're at 35 Holy Power. Divine Purpose procs either immediately after casting Templars or after getting back to 3 Holy Power. It's also really good when you combine it with a Vanquisher's Hammer, since you can instantly use 2 stacks. Blade of Justice when you have 3 or less Holy Power. Judgment right before using Templars unless you have 5 Holy Power already. Then Hammer of Wrath when it procs or if you already have Wings up. And then lastly, Crusader Strike when nothing else is available. You want to save Vanquisher's Hammer for whenever you try to get some big bursts out, or if you have both stacks off cooldown. It can be kind of hard landing all 4 stacks in a single burst window without getting some Lucky Divine Purpose procs, so try to stagger them a lot if possible. Now then, let's talk about the burst with Seraphim. So this time you want to get 5 Holy Power, then pop Seraphim, into Vanquisher's Hammer, into Templars, Wake, Templars, and that's the most burst you can generally get without a Divine Purpose proc. Now lastly, let's do the rotation for Seraphim plus Final Reckoning. It's pretty similar to the last one, you just throw in Final Reckoning. So it's get 5 Holy Power, then pop Seraphim, then Vanquisher's Hammer, then Final Reckoning into a Templars, Wake, Templars. And that's it. That's Ret's general burst rotation for every spec. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if I'm missing anything that you wish was included. But yeah, this is just kind of a general guide to get people started for the season. In the future, I'll probably be going into more in-depth guides, like matchup guides, into things like Rogue Mage, Jungle, just other popular comps. But yeah, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoy. Peace.